The mare came limping into Bitterroot at first light, reins trailing like torn ribbon, and blood darkened the saddle leather. No one moved at first. The dog asleep beneath the saloon porch gave a low whine. The blacksmith, halfway through swinging his hammer, froze mid-strike. The morning breeze caught the church bell rope, and it clinked like a ghost tapping for prayer. Elijah Cutter watched from the shade of the livery barn. One boot crossed over the other, coffee gone cold in his hand. The mare was Mercy Holloway's, pale dappled gray with one bad ear and a stubborn streak that made her near unrideable, except for Mercy. The girl had a way with broken things. But the horse wasn't supposed to be back. Not without her. Elijah tossed the coffee and stood. The horse stopped dead center in the dust-washed street, sides heaving, eyes rolling white. Its flanks trembled under the weight of something unspoken, the kind of fear that lives deep in an animal's bones. "Where's the girl?" came a voice behind Elijah. The sheriff, old Talmadge, rubbing sleep from his face, pistol belt still loose around his hips. He looked at the horse like it had spoken blasphemy. Elijah didn't answer. He stepped into the sun, boots sinking slow into dirt baked hard by the summer. Flies buzzed where blood crusted along the saddle-horn. "She went out Tuesday," the sheriff muttered, mostly to himself. "Took supplies. Said she'd be back by nightfall." 3 days, Elijah said. First words he'd spoken in town since last week. Voice like a blade drawn slow from a scabbard. The sheriff shifted. "Well, maybe she camped out. Canyon Trail gets rough." Elijah ran a hand along the mare's neck. She shivered, then leaned into his palm like a child might. He untied something from a saddle horn. A ribbon. Frayed blue silk. Mercy's hair ribbon. And tucked into it, a small bundle of dry sage. Crushed, as if gripped hard in a fist. Elijah turned without a word and walked back toward the barn. "Where you going?" Talmadge asked. Elijah didn't slow. "To find what's left." The canyon began 5 miles west, where the scrub gave way to rock teeth, and rattlers ruled the ground. Elijah rode a mule, his horse lame from a shoe lost 2 days back. He didn't mind. The mule was quiet, sure-footed, and didn't spook at shadows. The sun was climbing fast. Heat shimmered over the trail, warping distance like a lie. Vultures circled high, though none dropped low. Not yet. He didn't bring much. A canteen, a knife, and a Winchester slung across his back. No bedroll. He didn't plan on sleeping. At the first ridge, he dismounted and crouched. Dry grass bent under his fingers. A faint groove in the dirt, a hoof print. 2 more. Then none. The tracks ended like someone had picked the horse up and carried it away. He stood and scanned the slope. To the south, a broken cedar tree, branches stripped clean. East, a flicker of light, glass-catching sun. Elijah moved toward it, slow as breath. Each step placed like a man used to landmines. There was a boot lying in the brush, small, worn at the heel. A woman's. He knelt. Not much blood. Not enough for a killing. The boot was dry. But there, beneath it, a patch of darker soil. Scuffed. A drag mark. Someone had pulled her. Eastward. He followed. By high noon he found the camp. Or what was left of it. Ashes in a fire ring. Bones gnawed clean. An empty canteen, bullet-pierced. And above all else, a silence so thick it hurt. He stepped carefully around the edge. Nothing moved. The world was holding its breath. Near the far stone, something caught in the wind. Elijah reached out. A scrap of cloth. Sky blue. And a single, blonde hair tangled in the thread. He closed his fist around it and stared out toward the canyon mouth. That's when he saw the birds. Not vultures this time, jays. Nervous things. Darting low and loud over the scrub, just beyond the ridge. Something had disturbed them. Something alive. Elijah swung the Winchester from his back and checked the chamber. Loaded. He didn't break into a run. Just walked. 1 step. Then another. Like a man going to the gallows and knowing which rope was his. The trail narrowed into a funnel of rock. And then quiet sobbing. He froze. It was faint. Could have been wind. Could have been memory. But it was there. A whimper. Then silence. Then breath, shallow, ragged. He moved toward it, every nerve sharp as cut glass. And in the clearing ahead, he saw it. A tree. Twisted, blackened from lightning long ago. And against its trunk, tied with rope at wrists and ankles, a woman. Her head hung low. Hair matted with dirt. Lips cracked. But alive. Mercy Holloway. Elijah stepped into the open, rifle loose at his side. She didn't look up. He moved closer. Cut the rope with a blade. He kept inside his boot. Her body slumped forward, but he caught her. She blinked once. "Elijah," she rasped. A single word, dry as dust. He looked into the canyon beyond them. No sound. No sign. But something had done this, and they weren't far. He lifted her gently, cradled like a sleeping child. "No one hurt you again," he said, voice soft, certain, and started walking. The first thing she lost was a son. Mercy Holloway hung by the wrists, arms stretched over her head, rough hemp biting into skin already split. Her legs had gone numb sometime during the second day. Time didn't pass here, it bled. Above, the sky had turned pale. Too pale. Like it had burned itself out watching. There was no shade. No shelter. Just rock and heat and buzzards wheeling overhead, always watching. Waiting. She stopped screaming after the first day. The first scream had made the men laugh. The second had drawn one of them closer. Just close enough to remind her he could end it if he wanted. He hadn't. And after that, she saved her strength. Her throat burned like it had swallowed ash. Her lips cracked when she breathed. The flies didn't care. They clung to her skin, humming soft like lullabies turned rotten. She was alone now. The men had left 2 hours ago, maybe more. Time bent in the canyon. Shadows stretched long even when the sun burned high. Her eyes fluttered shut. Behind them, cold water. Her mother's voice. A brass brooch, stolen from the general store and returned the next day, because her father had said it was better to starve honest than eat with a lie. A sound. Soft. A footstep. She stiffened, flinching as pain lanced down her spine. Then came a voice, low and mean. "Still breathing, little flower?" Mercy didn't answer. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She would not give him the satisfaction. The man stepped closer. Saul Vane, tall and lean with skin like old parchment and teeth too white for a man who never bathed. He smelled of smoke and chewing tobacco and something darker, something rotten beneath the surface. He crouched beside her, brushing dirt from her cheek with mock gentleness. "Didn't think you'd make it to morning. Stubborn thing, ain't you?" Mercy turned her head away. He chuckled. "I knew your daddy. Preacher man with a badge. Thought the world ran on sermons and bullets. He hung my brother on a whisper." Vane stood slowly, stretching his back until it cracked. "So I figured I'd return the favor. But you ain't screaming like I'd hoped. That bothers me." He looked toward the rocks beyond. "Boys will be back tonight. We'll see if we can fix that." Then he turned and walked away, whistling something off-key. A tune with no name, just wrong notes in the dry wind. Mercy closed her eyes again and didn't cry. Not this time. Her body had no water left for tears. Elijah found the dead man slumped against a cedar log, flies dancing on his lips. He didn't touch the body, just crouched low, scanning the dirt. There had been 4 sets of tracks coming through, 1 horse, 3 on foot. One of the foot tracks dragged, like a man with a wound. The drag marks ended where the body lay. The other prints led east. Elijah took a thin strip of leather from his coat and tied his graying hair back. He adjusted the Winchester on his shoulder. Then he stood and walked. He didn't look back. In the hollow of the rocks, Saul Vane built a fire from dry sage and creosote. It burned fast and high, smoke curling toward the dusk. Jeb and Crow came back with 2 rabbits and a skin of something that smelled of kerosene and regret. They laughed like boys who'd never seen a gallows. Crow's left hand was wrapped in a dirty rag. He'd cut himself gutting the meat. "Girl still hanging?" Jeb asked, tossing one of the rabbits onto the coals. Vane nodded. "Tougher than she looks." "Pretty," Crow said, "even in rags." Vane shot him a look that cut the grin off his face. Crow cleared his throat. "Didn't mean nothing." The fire popped. The wind shifted. Vane's eyes narrowed. "We don't linger here. 1 more night, then we ride." "Thought we were waiting for her people to come looking." Jeb muttered. If they were coming, they'd be here. Vane's hand twitched toward his hip, brushing the butt of his revolver. But someone might. Someone who ain't people. He stood and stared off into the dark. I seen a man once in Missouri. Came after us like death on a pale horse. Never said a word. Just moved like wind. By the time we figured what he was, we were half gone. Jeb laughed nervously. You drunk, Saul? Not drunk enough, he muttered. Then turned to the fire and threw in a handful of sage. Sparks leapt, then vanished. Mercy awoke to breath on her face. Not hot, not cruel. Careful. Fingers touched her wrist, rough and calloused, but gentle. She blinked. Elijah. He was there. Eyes shadowed, jaw set. He didn't speak. Just sliced the rope binding her wrists and caught her as she sagged. Her knees folded. Her lips moved but made no sound. He lifted her like a sack of grain, one hand under her knees, the other behind her back. She weighed almost nothing. He started walking. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. Elijah didn't answer. His steps were slow, deliberate, as if noise itself could kill them. At the edge of the clearing, he paused and looked toward the firelight flickering beyond the rocks. 3 voices. One of them laughed. Another cursed. He set Mercy down beneath a thorn bush, covering her with his coat. Then he stood and disappeared into the dark. Vane stirred from his seat near the fire. His head tilted. Something wrong with the silence. Where's Crow? He asked. Jeb looked around. He just went to. A sound. Soft. Wet. Something hit the dirt. Jeb stood, hand going for his gun. Elijah, Vane whispered. The fire crackled. A shadow moved behind the flames. Vane pulled his gun. Elijah Cutter, he said louder, this time to the dark. That you? The wind answered. A faint rustle in the brush. Vane fired. Once. Twice. A third shot echoed long into the canyon. Silence. Then Crow stumbled back into the firelight, eyes wide. Jeb, he stopped. Look down. A red stain spread across his shirt. He fell without finishing the sentence. Jeb backed up fast, pistol drawn. Saul. A shot cracked. Jeb spun and dropped, mouth open like he just remembered something important. Vane stood alone. He turned in a slow circle, eyes wide, teeth bared. Elijah, he said again, voice thin now. This ain't your fight. From the dark, a voice. You made it mine. Then came silence, so deep it felt like the world had gone deaf. Vane stood there, heart pounding, hand trembling on the revolver. He didn't see Elijah, but he felt him, somewhere just out of reach. Watching, waiting. Mercy lay beneath the coat, breath coming in shallow gasps. Her fingers twitched around the edge of the fabric. A beetle crawled past her elbow. She didn't move. She could hear them yelling now. 2 voices. Then one. Then only fire crackling. She stared up at the stars. They looked colder than they had before. Clearer, too. And somewhere beyond the rocks, thunder rumbled. But there were no clouds. Not yet. The fire was dying. Ash curled like frost over the coals as Saul Vane stood in the stillness, blood drying black on his boots. He hadn't moved since the 3rd shot. Jeb was face down, his cheek in the dirt. Crow lay staring at the stars, lips parted in a last question he'd never get to ask. Vane didn't shake, but something had cracked beneath the leather of his skin. Elijah, he called again, quieter now. Not a challenge. Not even a warning. A plea. No answer. He took a step backward, toward the canyon mouth. Another. Then turned and ran. Mercy sat up too fast. Pain flared behind her eyes. Her head spun. Elijah, she croaked. The dark answered with silence. She pushed the coat off and dragged herself upright. Her legs barely worked. She used a rock to brace, teeth clenched, arms shaking. A few feet away, Crow's boots stuck out from the brush. She didn't look at his face. Couldn't. Elijah, she tried again louder. A whisper behind her. Stay low. She turned. He stood a few feet off, eyes scanning the horizon. He ran, Elijah said. Vane. Elijah nodded. Mercy's voice came out like wind scraping stone. Then let him. Elijah didn't answer. He crouched to check the shells in his rifle. Elijah, She moved toward him, every step like fire. He's finished. No, Elijah said, soft and final. He's not. She grabbed his arm. Her fingers left streaks on his sleeve, dust, sweat, a trace of blood. You got me out. That's enough. Elijah met her eyes. Behind his, something burned slow and quiet. It wasn't just you. Mercy stepped back. He stood fully now, taller than she remembered, older, sharper around the edges. Something had changed in him, and not just since yesterday. This was older. A wound turned bone deep. Elijah. But he was already walking. The stars bled into dawn by the time Vane reached the ridge. His horse, stolen from a traveler last week, was tethered beneath a lone pine. He fumbled with the saddle, hands slick. He could feel it. Not just fear. Not just guilt. Something older. A shadow on his heels. He'd seen Elijah Cutter once before, 15 years back. A bounty job gone sideways near San Saba. 3 men dead in a churchyard. The 4th, Elijah, walked away, hat in hand, not a drop of blood on his coat. The legend wasn't a lie. And now he was coming. Vane kicked the horse into motion. The beast resisted, nervous. Sensed it too. Mercy found the flask by Crow's body. Whiskey. She forced down a mouthful and tied the rest to her belt. Elijah hadn't come back. She should have stayed, should have waited for help. But something was pulling her forward. Not duty, not anger. A thread she couldn't cut. She followed the trail east, every step steadier than the last. Elijah rode silent, eyes fixed on the morning haze. He wasn't tracking now. He didn't need to. The storm was already rolling inside him. Every man who rode with Saul Vane had left a mark, on towns, on women, on the weak. Elijah had followed their shadows for years. And every time, he'd let them pass. Not my fight, he told himself. Not anymore. Until Mercy. Until the tree. Until the silence in her eyes, that looked like the past he'd buried. Something inside him had turned over. Something final. He caught sight of Vane's trail, near midday. The dust still hung in the air like smoke. Elijah stopped at the rise above a narrow gorge, spotted movement below. There, the horse. And the man slumped over its neck, still running from ghosts. He chambered around and rode down. Vane heard the hoofbeats before he saw him. He spun in the saddle, eyes wide, mouth dry. Elijah. Cutter didn't answer, just kept riding even. Vane's hand flew to his holster. Too slow. Elijah's rifle barked once. The bullet hit the ground just ahead of Vane's horse. It reared, screaming, and threw him sideways. Vane hit the earth hard, scrambled to his feet, revolver shaking in his grip. Don't do it, Elijah said, dismounting. Calm as rain. You don't have to. Vane spat. She's alive. You left her for dead. Vane's voice cracked. We were boys, Cutter. We were dumb. You think I planned it. Elijah stepped forward. Vane fired. Missed. Elijah didn't raise his rifle. Just walked, slow and steady. Vane backed away, feet sliding on shale. You're not a judge, Vane hissed. You're not God. No, Elijah said. I remember God. He left us both a long time ago. He raised the Winchester. Vane stopped moving. No last words. Elijah asked. Vane's jaw twitched. You're just like me. Elijah paused. For half a second. Then fired. Mercy reached the gorge just as the shot echoed off the cliffs. She found Elijah sitting on a rock, rifle across his knees. Vane's body lay in the dust, eyes closed, peace faked. Mercy didn't speak. Elijah didn't look at her. She stepped beside him, watching the wind lift grit around the fallen man's boots. You could have let him live. I know. Mercy studied Elijah's face. The calm wasn't peace. It was weight. Heavy. Final. What now? She asked. Elijah didn't answer. He just looked at the sky and said nothing at all. The wind had shifted. It carried the scent of cedar now, not gunpowder, not blood. Elijah Cutter knelt beside the creek at the edge of the gorge, sleeves rolled, hands dipped into the cold. The water turned cloudy where it touched his skin. Dust, not guilt, though it was hard to tell the difference these days. Behind him, The body of Saul Vane lay half-covered with a saddle blanket. Mercy hadn't asked him to do it. She hadn't needed to. Some things you do for yourself. Some things for the ones watching. They didn't bury Vane. Too much rock in the gorge. Too shallow earth. And truth was, Elijah hadn't earned the energy it'd take to dig a grave. Instead, he stacked a circle of stones around the body and left his hat beside it. A simple gesture, no scripture spoken. Just quiet. When Mercy limped over to stand beside him, he didn't speak. Neither did she. Their silence wasn't heavy. It was full. Back at the canyon, the bodies of Jeb and Crow were gone. Picked over by coyotes or buried by strangers. Mercy didn't ask. She just looked at the spot where the rope had hung, where bark still bled on the cottonwood. Her eyes lingered and then moved on. She didn't cry. Elijah watched her from across the clearing, hat pulled low, arms crossed. She hadn't sat since morning. Her body still carried the stiffness of survival, movements sharp, too cautious. "You ever ride before?" he asked. "Not for years." "Reckon you'll need to." She nodded. They didn't talk about the cabin, or where she'd go, or what she'd do when she got there. There was no plan, just the way to forward. That night, they camped near the Red Bluff. Mercy slept on her side, one arm beneath her head, the other across her ribs. She flinched in her sleep. Elijah sat awake by the fire, whittling a stick into nothing, piece by piece, edge by edge. Each curl of wood dropped into the flames, like seconds being spent. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "You remember that winter in Abilene?" Mercy stirred. "Barely. Snow up to our knees." "You had a dog then. Skinny thing. Never barked." "He ran off before spring." Elijah nodded. He was smart. A beat of silence passed between them, warm with memory and regret. "He was scared," she said, quieter now. By the third day, they reached Sand Branch. It wasn't much, just a well, a dry goods shack, and 3 houses leaning toward collapse. But it was somewhere. Mercy rode stiff in the saddle, back straight, face calm. A woman came out of the store and narrowed her eyes at them. Elijah tipped his hat. Mercy didn't. Inside, they found coffee, bandages, and a jar of sweet pickles that made Mercy laugh for the first time. "Pickles," Elijah said, one brow raised. She shrugged. "I used to hate him. Then I was hungry once. Changed everything." He handed over the last of his coins, without comment. They stayed the night in a barn behind the livery. The old man who owned it didn't ask questions. He just said, "No fires. No noise. Feed the mule if you're kind." Mercy slept in a bed of hay. Elijah stayed near the door. In the dark, she spoke. "What happens when it finds you again?" "What?" "The fire. The past. You can ride a long time, but it still knows your name." He looked over his shoulder. Her face was half-shadowed in moonlight. "I let it find me this time." She rolled onto her back and didn't answer. The next morning, Elijah packed his rifle, saddlebag, and canteen. Mercy was already up, rolling bandages tight into a linen sack. "You heading west?" she asked. He didn't reply right away. "There's a wagon train leaving from Palo Duro in 5 days. Heard they'll take anyone who walks straight and don't steal." "I'm not going with you," Elijah said. She looked at him, still as breath. "I wasn't asking," she said. He nodded. "Didn't think so." They stood facing each other in the dust. Not far apart, but farther than before. "You gave me back something," she said. "I just cut a rope." "No," she said. "You stopped it from happening again." He watched her for a long moment, then reached into his coat and pulled out a folded scrap of paper, yellowed with age, worn at the corners. He held it out. She took it slowly. It was a drawing, a sketch in pencil. A small cabin, a girl on the porch, a man sitting in a rocking chair, rifle across his lap. "It's nothing," Elijah said. "Just something I drew when I still thought I'd build it." Mercy ran her fingers over the lines. "Why give it to me?" "Because you might still build it." They walked together until the road split. To the left, the cattle trail to Palo Duro. Dusty, rough, but traveled. To the right, the canyon's edge. A place with no name. Mercy turned left. Elijah watched her go. She didn't look back. Didn't have to. When she was just a speck in the distance, he turned and walked the other way. Evening came soft and gold. Somewhere behind him, Mercy would find the wagon train. Maybe a new name. Maybe work. Maybe peace. Elijah didn't need those things. He found a stream at sundown and sat beside it. Took off his coat. Folded it. Set it next to him. Pulled the cartridge from his rifle and dropped it into the stream. Watched the water carry it away. The wind stirred the grass. He exhaled slow. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like running. What needed doing was done. But the dust would rise again. He could feel it. And next time, he wouldn't be late. The sun was lower now, crouched over the hills, like it knew it wasn't welcome much longer. Elijah rode alone. The road was no road. Just two ruts running north through greasewood and dead wind. His horse limped slightly on the right, but Elijah didn't push her. There was no hurry anymore. No one chasing. No one waiting. That was the thing about quiet. You never trusted it at first. He came across a church around midday. Or what had been one, now half bones, half shadow. A bell hung cracked in its tower. The door was gone, the steps worn to almost nothing. Elijah dismounted and led the mare to water pooled in the church's broken stone basin. A bird flew from the rafters. A black one. Inside, pews were overturned, dust veiling everything like an old story you don't read anymore. He sat on the altar, removed his hat, stared up at the roof, where sky leaked through. He didn't pray. He listened. Somewhere behind him, Mercy was out there. Maybe with a wagon train, maybe not. Maybe under a new name, maybe under none at all. But breathing. That was enough. He didn't need a letter, or a sign, or forgiveness. Sometimes mercy ain't words, it's distance. That night he made camp in a dry wash under a pinched moon. No fire. The cold came slow but steady, wrapping around his shoulders like an old coat. He sat with the rifle across his lap, the same way he used to when it meant something. Not protection, not warning, memory. The stars hung low enough to taste. He let the silence settle in his bones. Come morning, he found a single rose, not growing, laid carefully on a stone, far from any place roses ought to be. He didn't touch it, just stared, like maybe it had something to say he couldn't quite hear. Then he walked on. Days passed, or maybe it was only one long day and one longer night. He crossed dry riverbeds, watched antelope scatter in the distance, listened to thunder roll in mountains too far to matter. Each step took him nowhere in particular, but farther from who he'd been. That was enough. In a town called Mercy's Fall, a name he didn't trust, he sold the mare. Took the coins without haggling. Bought a tin of coffee, a new shirt, and a pocket-sized book he'd never read. He left the rest. One morning, he passed a grave tucked under a cottonwood. No marker. Just a child's toy nailed to the bark. A wooden horse, hand-carved, missing a leg. He stood there for a long while. The wind played tricks with the branches. And he remembered his own boy. The one never born. The one never even named. That night, he dreamed of faces he couldn't place. Laughter that didn't belong to him. And a fire that never went out. By summer's end, his beard had gone almost all gray. He shaved it off with a broken mirror in a stream bed. Watched the hairs float like regrets downstream. He looked younger after. Not young. Just less like something hunted. He found a girl in a town called Juniper Rise. She was sitting outside a bakery, barefoot, eating something sweet. Her face smudged, her dress torn, but her eyes steady. A boy beside her offered Elijah a crust of bread, without speaking. The girl pointed at his rifle. You shoot bad men with that. Elijah squatted beside them. Not anymore. Why not? He thought a moment. Because I don't need to. The girl frowned. You sure? No, he said. Not yet. She nodded like she understood. And maybe she did. Children sometimes see clearer than grown men. Elijah Cutter left Juniper Rise, with a letter tucked into his coat. Not for him. For someone else. He'd find a way to send it. Or he wouldn't. Some things are just good to carry. The land opened up again. Wide, quiet, waiting. He rode out one evening with the wind behind him and the sound of church bells, real or remembered, somewhere far off. His coat was lighter now. his hand steady, and for the first time in a long while, there was no name on his tongue, no list in his head, no face in his dreams. Only sky, only road, only the slow sound of hoofbeats fading into dusk. And on the ridge behind him, a single boot print in dust, still warm, still deep, still facing forward.